Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio, streaming foxsportsfm.com, broadcasting live once again on the Miller and Moulton YouTube and Twitch channels. Joining us on the Goldberg New and Abraham Law Firm hotline, local people, local practice, local knowledge, goldberg-law.com, is Patrick Finley, former Naples Daily News alum, who these days is writing for the Chicago Sun-Times, covering the Bears and the NFL. You can follow Patrick on Twitter at Patrick Finley. Patrick, how are you and family and friends faring during all this?
Not too bad, though. It's going to be like 42 degrees today, so that could be better.
Ouch! I don't even know what that is. I've got to go into a cooler to feel temperatures like that. Well, I mean, what's more bothersome in Chicago, 42 degrees or 10 tight ends on the roster?
In the middle of the offseason, 10 tight ends, I don't think are that big of a deal. But, yeah, the 42, it was 74 yesterday, and this could be 42 today, and that's just unacceptable.
It really is. It really is. But why? I mean, what was the breakdown as to why there were a lot of needs. They don't pick till the second round. They spend money on Graham. What's the rationale behind going tight end when there seemed to be other pressing needs? Did they just say it was too good of a player to pass up on, or is this part of the system?
Well, the Graham and Kmet play different positions. Kmet is that inline tight end, the one who lines up next to the tackle. Graham is the guy that you put out wide. He is their U tight end. And Kmet is their Y tight end. So technically they play different positions. They've got 10 guys, but the old saying about having two quarterbacks means you have none. The Bears have those too. But having 10 tight ends means that you really don't have the answer on the team. They really like Kmet. They think that he can help them immediately and into the future. He's a local kid. There was a parade past his house the day after he got drafted. They think it's a good fit all the way around.
Talking Bears with Patrick Finley of the Chicago Sun-Times. You can follow him on Twitter at Patrick Finley. Not a surprise that the Bears did not pick up the fifth-year option on Trubisky. Patrick, Foles is the starter, right? They're going to say whatever they're going to say, but they made the trade. They gave up a fourth-round pick. They don't pick up the fifth-year option on Trubisky. I mean, if Foles isn't the starter, isn't it because he got hurt?
They guaranteed him $21 million too, which is helpful when looking at who they prefer. I don't know. Maybe deep down, if Mitch ran and hid with this starting job, if Mitch was so much better than Foles, that's probably the best outcome for the franchise here. But he hasn't done anything to prove that that's going to happen. They didn't give up all that capital and pay all that money to Nick Foles because they thought that he wouldn't be needed. Let's put it that way. And although I'd argue to you that if you look at Foles' resume, this is not the resume of a guy that you want to start 16 games or that you expect to start 16 games. What is it? It's been 5 years since he started more than half of his team's regular season games. I know that, throws out the most important part of his resume, which is the postseason. But, I don't think either of them will start 16 games. Let's put it that way.
How much better are the Chicago Bears right now on paper than they were when the season ended?
Oh, a little bit. I mean, I suppose you can say that for everybody. Everybody on paper is a little better, probably. They traded out Leonard Floyd for Robert Quinn. That is an upgrade. They brought back Danny Trevathan. Jimmy Graham, I'm still scratching my head why you'd give him 2 years, $16 million. I thought he was just about done, but he should be an upgrade over Trey Burton, who missed most of last season because he was hurt and still couldn't pass a physical when they cut him. So, slight upgrades there. But when you look at what Ryan Pace has done, he's got a lot of guys coming in who are 30 years old or older. I mean, Tashawn Gibson, the old Texan safety, signed with the Bears last week. Ted Ginn is going to sign with them. These are the moves made by somebody trying to win right now. And if he doesn't, I don't know whether he'll be allowed to make the draft picks next year, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And obviously, every single day, the Trubisky pick looks as if it's going to be in the first paragraph of his obituary. And Patrick, I guess ultimately that is the question. Is this a really good team being held back at the quarterback position, or was this a team that 2 years ago kind of overachieved a little bit? Everything fell into place. You could argue that happened last year with the Packers as well, and that really where they are last year is kind of what they are. Which is it?
I think they're a really, really, really good defense. And I think that they're being held back by the offense. Is that mostly Trubisky? Yeah, probably. But Matt Nagy's never been committed to running the football. Even 2 years ago when they were good, Jordan Howard, was average at best. They trade Jordan Howard last year, draft David Montgomery, and actually take a step back. The Bears fired their offensive line coach, brought in a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterbacks coach, moved some pieces around, brought in a new tight ends coach. So Nagy needs to adjust. Nagy's proven to be a really good leader of men, but he needs to adjust his play calling. He needs to find a way to move the football, even if it's turning around and handing the ball off. If the offense can just be average, I think this is a playoff team because that defense is so good. But, we're going to have to see, if you don't trust your quarterback and if you don't trust your run game, I don't know how you're going to move the football.
Well, and everybody thought that they drafted a kid that could really run the football, and I don't think we ever found out last year. I don't think they ever really gave Montgomery the ball enough consistently to see whether or not this guy can do it. But does Nagy need to relinquish play calling duties?
I don't think so. He brought in all these new voices, but he made it very clear that he wasn't going to. I'm okay giving him another year. When you look at what he did that first season, going 12-4, making the playoffs, they ran all these trick plays, these memorable things, even for people outside of Chicago. I think he certainly bought himself more than one bad season to keep going. It'll be interesting to see how he incorporates other people's ideas into what he wants to do. But keep this in mind. When he took the Bears job, one of the handshake deals he had with Andy Reid was that he wasn't going to take any of his guys. So when he started in Chicago, his new coworkers were people he had never worked with before. And, 2 years in, he's, shuffled the offensive coaching staff. Last year, he lost Vic Fangio and a lot of that defensive coaching staff to the Broncos. So there's been some turnover, but now really for the first time, he has people, in places that he is familiar with and that he knows from old jobs, stuff like that. So you would think that, if he can't make it work this season, that there are bigger questions ahead.
He's Patrick Finley, covers the Bears in the NFL for the Chicago Sun-Times. Follow him on Twitter at Patrick Finley. The feeling around the organization, does it feel as if this is it? This is make it happen year, or it's regime change from top right on through? Because from the outside looking in, Patrick, that's what it looks like to us. They got to win or Pace and Nagy are gone.
The front office likes Pace. I think that if they went 5-11, I think they'd have no choice but to fire Pace. I would be careful linking the two guys too. Remember, Ryan Pace hired and fired John Fox and then hired Matt Nagy. If Pace were to be fired, I don't think that would ensure Matt Nagy's demise by any stretch. That said, you and I both know that when you bring in a new boss, what if the casualties is he eventually will fire the coach probably. But Nagy has far more positives going for him right now than Pace does. And here's the thing: if they're bad again, they're going to have to draft a quarterback, with a top 10 pick next year. And to me, the question then becomes, do you trust Ryan Pace, the guy who signed Mike Glennon, the guy who drafted Mitch Trubisky, and the guy who, traded a fourth-round pick and gave $21 million to Nick Foles, when guess what? He could have had Andy Dalton for $3 million if he had waited a month. Do you trust him to be the one to make the quarterback pick? That's the question. If you don't trust him to make the pick, I don't know how you can employ him. If you do say, okay, maybe you get another shot at this and Matt Nagy will help you comb through the list of college quarterbacks, maybe you could talk yourself into it. But if they're so bad that they're drafting high, I find it hard to believe that Pace survives.
In all seriousness, is there anyone that Chicago could bring in that the fan base would trust to get a quarterback? Because, well, we all know the Bears can't seem to find one. I mean, this has been the problem with the Bears forever. So is there a trust factor to anybody finding a quarterback for the Chicago Bears?
Are you telling me that Sid Luckman being the greatest quarterback of all time, you got to go back pretty far for that?
Right.
You know what? No, what's weird about Chicago fans is Chicago fans have tricked themselves into thinking that if you play defense and run the football, you don't need a quarterback. And, maybe that made sense in 1985, but it certainly doesn't anymore. Yeah, I mean, you're right. People here will probably feel doomed until proven otherwise. But remember, we're a year removed from Mitch Trubisky playing in the Pro Bowl. I mean, they thought that Trubisky was going to be the guy. The fan base did, at least. And that's what made last year so interesting, was that crumbled before their eyes before week 8. Like, it was clear by midseason that whatever fans had hoped Mitch would be, he wasn't. And he never really dug himself out.
I mean, 17 touchdown passes from a starting quarterback? It's just stunning, actually, what little production they got. Patrick, why Foles? And especially why at the time that they did it? Because, we're a couple of yahoos in Southwest Florida. We knew Cam, Dalton, Jameis. I mean, we knew 2 out of these 3 at least. Teddy Bridgewater was going to be on the market, and Teddy came to Chicago last year and beat the tar out of him in a very efficient performance. I mean, why Foles? And at that price and giving up a 4th-round pick, why Nick Foles when this was the greatest veteran free agent quarterback class of all time?
He knows them, and they trust him, is the short answer. Nick Foles played for Matt Nagy when Nagy coached in Kansas City and in Philadelphia. He played for Bill Lazor, who's their new offensive coordinator, when they were in Philly. Do you remember that one Eagles team with Chip Kelly that was impossible to stop?
Yeah, and he was tremendous. 27-2 was his TD to interception ratio that year.
Yeah, and then everybody figured out how to stop them the next year. Yeah, they played together there. Juan Castillo, the Bears' offensive line coach, was on that Eagles coaching staff. He was actually their defensive coordinator at the time. John DeFilippo, who you guys know from his work with the Jaguars and elsewhere, was on the Eagles team that won the Super Bowl with Foles as the quarterback. There's familiarity across the board there, and the Bears will tell you that the coronavirus stuff did not push them in one direction or the next. But I will tell you that, if they're not going to have an off-season program, bringing in a quarterback that already knows the playbook and that knows what the coaches are looking for, I think is super important. And then if you are Matt Nagy here, and if you need somebody to trust, and that's what this comes down to, is they couldn't trust Trubisky, then bringing in somebody you already know, I think, is a fairly logical leap. Now, are they getting value out of this? Absolutely not. I mean, they're paying him more money than they should after giving up a 4th-round pick. And when you look at what Jameis Winston got, when you look at what Andy Dalton got, it's almost criminal that Nick Foles is getting paid what he's getting paid. But that's their thought process there. And with Cam Newton, the Bears' problem with Cam Newton was no different than every other team's problem, which is until you can sit him down and poke and prod him with your doctors, you can't sign him or count on anything from him. And that's just not going to happen anytime soon, given the environment here.
Patrick, hope all is well and continues to stay well. Thanks so much for your time, and hopefully we can do this again whenever training camp is.
Yeah, whatever that may be, I'd be happy to. Thanks so much.
Patrick Finley covers the Bears and the NFL for the Chicago Sun-Times, a Naples Daily News alum, for those of you who remember Patrick. And you can follow Patrick on Twitter at Patrick Finley.